Hello, friends. Welcome to People Are Interesting, an audio journal hosted by me, Jan K, as a record of people who inspired me and of topics that I found intriguing over time. Enjoy and thank you for joining the club.
And we're running. Thanks so much for being here, Jody. With me is a creator and presenter of YouTube channel called Exit Strategy TV, active on Instagram, YouTube, but you're also a journalist and a traveler.
That's
Isn't that
correct.
right?
Thank you so much for having me on. Yeah, I wear many hats. So, yeah, that's right.
I think people who wear many hats tend to be very interesting because it's just different influences. I feel like literally your brain is shaped in many different
Yeah,
directions.
probably. I mean, I guess. Yeah, I mean, so I guess first and foremost, yeah. I mean, I'm a journalist, independent journalist. I string for a lot of different publications that will buy some of the pitches that I either send them, or sometimes I'll be commissioned for items. But you're correct in the first part of your introduction. That I have created a project called Exit Strategy. It's basically a side project to my reporting. And yeah, I mean, you could find that on YouTube and Instagram.
Yeah, and that's actually
Oh,
how I found you. So maybe let's dive right into the first question because I think it's going to unpack what it is that you do with your work and with your channel. I've seen this video from the Python Temple and other clips from Benin and
yeah.
West Africa. What were you doing there? How did you end up there?
So I could give you the longer version of how Exit Strategy started, and then I guess that can, and then my own career in reporting, because they kind of overlap. And that might, because sometimes it's difficult to describe exactly what exit strategy is for people. It's still very new. Um, well, I can give you that version, I guess. So during the pandemic, when all of us had nothing to do, we were all stuck at home. We were all working from home. Um, Instead of doing what I think most of my American brethren did, was watch television and drink themselves to sleep every night, I decided to make the better use of the time and just start a podcast. And I named it Exit Strategy Podcast. I think the term exit strategy had always been in my mind since following the war on terror. It was a term that was constantly thrown around and used when the American foreign policy establishment, or the Bush administration, was going into the Iraq War, which I was adamantly opposed to at the time. And mundane critics um, of that choice to invade and occupy Iraq, they use the term exit strategy. So I always found it very interesting. It was also brought up again during the um, aftermath of, or the pulling out of Afghanistan. And the reason behind it was because I was very interested in geopolitics. I was interested in what was happening around the world, and uh, our major mainstream media outlets in the States were not very critical of the foreign policy, or not enough. And to the extent that they were critical, they were only critical for about 5 minutes. They only gave you about 5 minutes of information, and that was a long time. And it still is a very long time to condense a lot of that information. So I thought the best way to do this is to talk to experts, talk to a lot of different people for a long amount of time, for at least an hour, so you can get some content that's at least thought-provoking. Um, and so during the pandemic, I started the Exit Strategy Podcast. Exit Strategy Podcast was, the idea was to create a podcast around geopolitics, conflict, and the illicit political economy. So I just started reaching out to people who were already home anyway. Nobody was nobody was out doing anything. So I was able to get a very wide variety and high profile guests for the podcast. It kind of took off. It was, it's always slow to start these things. But I had a great time doing it. It was a good use of time during the pandemic. And probably around, I guess, a year and a half in, I started thinking, hey, I wonder, once this pandemic is over, it might be interesting to go to some of these places that I'm talking to experts with, and maybe do some filming, and maybe make a sort of vlog style YouTube channel where I cover some of these same topics. And I also included culture and cuisine. And the reason I did that was because there are so many countries, or excuse me, there aren't so many countries, but there are countries that are enduring conflict, and it's almost impossible to get there as an independent journalist and pull out a camera and start filming and asking questions. It's a notoriously stupid thing to do. So to continue to be able to create content, I expanded to Exit Strategy TV, and I cover, or at least try to give topics around conflict in a specific area, but also try to showcase some culture and cuisine. So I had already been to Ethiopia for some time, and I had a lot of footage from there. I was editing footage during the pandemic, and as the pandemic was coming to a close, and as consumers were able to get back into the air and travel again, I simply outlined some places that I wanted to go to, specifically in Africa, that I wanted to check out, um, and that where the itinerary made sense. And those countries for this first trip, which happened last year between this time, April 2022, and I came back about the end of August, so about 6 months. And it started in Togo, so neighboring Benin. Started in Togo. I drove to Benin, spent time there, then flew to Ethiopia, spent a long time there, Kenya, Madagascar, back to Kenya, and then back home. And I got footage in each of those countries. Um, so I could get into all of that if you'd like, but that's basically what happened. So now I'm holding this big project, the Exit Strategy project, podcast on one hand, the audio video style vlog content on the other, and I'm just kind of umbrellaing it on YouTube right now.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's basically what it is, and that's what I'm doing right now.
Fantastic. Let's talk about the countries that you've picked to go to. So you said you started in Togo, Benin, Ethiopia, Madagascar.
Kenya, yeah.
Why did you pick? Yes, Kenya. Thank you. Why did you pick those countries? What was special
So it's a
about
good
them?
question. I mean, first and foremost, I was able to get I it at the time. It was there were still many COVID restrictions. So, for example, one of my first choices was going to be Ghana. But the
Hmm.
neighboring countries weren't allowing you to visit them if you were coming from Ghana. So I knew if I was traveling to Ghana,
Hmm.
I would have to really fly somewhere else immediately. I couldn't just travel through like in a line, you know? So I was trying to find places that were accessible and where their COVID rules were either coming to a close or that they would at least allow you to enter in through with a car or motorcycle or something over the border with a legitimate COVID test or pass. Um, the second reason is because I hail from New Orleans, Louisiana. This is a big French-speaking part of, or probably the only French-speaking part of the United States. We have Cajun and Creole culture here. That is a big part of the culture in South Louisiana. Um, and so I grew up eating gumbo. I grew up with voodoo museums and this voodoo lore around us.
Mm.
And you know that didn't happen in isolation. That came here like everything else did because we're such a new country. So where do those things come from? Well, partially West Africa, and Togo
Hmm.
has a just mountains worth of beautiful, amazing, just phenomenal voodoo culture, voodoo festivals, practices, and ceremonies. I certainly wanted to get there and check that out. And then neighboring Benin, I mean Togo as well. All of West Africa really eats gumbo. Um, the word gumbo is French for okra, and it's the
Mm.
staple of what goes in the gumbo. Now their gumbo is a little bit different, but anyway, one of the next upcoming videos is going to be me traveling through some of the markets in Benin, gathering the ingredients from gumbo, and going to a private citizen's home. That I was invited to go to their home and cook gumbo, prepare, and cook gumbo. Um, and yeah, that's going to be probably one of the next one of the next YouTube videos coming out there. So that's how I chose those in West Africa. In Ethiopia, I've already had many contacts there already. So it was at the time I was leaving Benin to Ethiopia, and there were no COVID restrictions at the time. So Ethiopia was a great choice for the third country there. And then I think by the time I was finished conducting most of the reporting and videography in Ethiopia, the COVID restrictions had been lifted in all of Africa, which was great. I was considering coming home right after Ethiopia, but because the COVID restrictions had been lifted, I was like, why not? Let's go down to Kenya. Let's do some shooting. And then I popped over to Madagascar for about 3 weeks, traveled the island, got a lot of great content, and then flew home. So that's basically how those countries came about. I'm going to do another round of traveling where it will be Africa again, probably. Not those countries, because I want to cover kind of as many places as I can and keep the channel as fluid and dynamic as possible. So, yeah.
So you're talking about the West African influences in
Yeah.
Louisiana. I am personally not from that corner of the world. Would you be able to explain a little bit more of what that flavor is and what are some of those cultural influences that you see in
Sure.
Louisiana? And then when you actually went to West Africa, what did you see there?
Yeah.
And about those
Sure, great
connections.
question. So a lot of the culinary influences of West Africa are often reported in our local and regional culinary news. So we know that there's an influence, but it never really goes into detail. And I really wanted to explore some of those details. I mean, the vegetables that were used in gumbo were brought by people who were sold into slavery and came from West Africa to the Caribbean, to South America, and to where I'm from, the Port of New Orleans. Port of New Orleans was a huge port for captured slaves, and they came with gumbo literally in hand, as far as the research shows. With the mix of Native American sassafras and other spices around here, there's the French influence of making a roux. This is when you cook down butter and oils to make a sort of brown gravy. That's the base of the gumbo. And then, inserting all of the seafood. Togo and Benin both are coastal countries, lots of access to seafood. So that's what went into those okra stews. And that's also what goes into our port of Louisiana. It's on the water. Everything about our culinary institutions basically revolve around seafood. It's oysters, it's crab, it's shellfish, it's shrimp, prawns. It's all of this stuff. So it was almost like a natural, even though it was brought together by a very brutal institution of slavery, it was almost the same sort of regional agricultural effects that brought that soup together. So, of course, you have that's kind of how, in summary, that's kind of how gumbo was brought here to Louisiana. I mean, and it's gone through many evolutions and iterations. Like I said, our gumbo here is a lot different from what they would consider gumbo, but you still see that was like the original, the gumbo, and ours is like much more. I wouldn't say evolved. It just changes. It's syncretic. There's so many other influences that go into Louisiana gumbo, and then also along with the food, most of West Africa believes in some form of Vodun or voodoo, and of course that was brought to Louisiana along the transatlantic slave trade. We still have voodoo practitioners here. They're not as many, but many exist throughout Louisiana. I mean, obviously, you'll see most of it in Haiti and throughout the Caribbean countries, but it certainly made its way here, and it's still something that's reveled. We have in Louisiana, our tourist industry is very large. It's basically we rely on oil and gas and tourism. And one of the reasons tourists continue to come is because New Orleans is really the only place in the United States where you can find anything voodoo related at all. Um, uh, there's really no other place like Louisiana, just because it still carries so much of that West African influence. And part of the cultural aspect of exit strategy was
Mm-hmm.
filming that, capturing that, and yeah, that's I'm in the process of editing those films right now. Yeah,
Okay.
sorry if that was a long-winded
So
answer.
no,
Uh,
it was no, not at all. Actually, I want to drill
sure.
into that a little bit more. So, Europe, not a lot of voodoo going on here, not like in Louisiana,
Right.
West Africa. Can you explain what that is, what it
What voodoo
entails?
entails? So I think it's
Yeah.
different for wherever you go. I'm no expert in the religion. I'm a armchair expert when it comes to this stuff. I just scratched the surface a little bit. If you go on YouTube and you look at most of the travel channels, they don't cover this stuff. It's usually people waving a camera around. Look at my first class flight, or they go to places. I think that there's probably a lot of content already, usually around Europe, because these are safe places to go.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's going to Togo. There are a lot of
Yeah.
risks going to West Africa and stuff. So that's part of the reason I wanted to cover this. But in terms of what voodoo entails, I mean, it's a mix of sort of like Catholicism and animism. It's kind of like this sort of, I don't want to use the word primitive, but it's like some of the pre-colonial religious beliefs that were already in Africa mixed with uh, a sort of Christianity. Um, and it's practiced differently everywhere you go. You know, uh, much of it, much of what I experienced in West Africa almost always included the blood of a sacrificed animal. So, for usually a chicken,
Mm-hmm.
these are the easiest to
Mm-hmm.
sacrifice, easiest to, I guess, um, clean or kill, and then they usually are doing ceremonies where they read the placement of bones or dice or stones or something like that, and then as well it also includes a heavy use of alcohol in almost every ceremony that I was a part of and filmed. Um, Throughout the region involved the consumption, myself and the voodoo priest consuming rum or consuming a
Mm-hmm.
sort of distilled moonshine, and then also
Mm-hmm.
them using that to throw on the animal or throw on the items that they were trying to read. Um, the practice varies widely depending on what you actually want to do. So, through my very limited knowledge and experience with them, it was explained that I could either sit down and ask about something about my life. So, for example, I could have a sort of, for Western audiences, it would be have like a fortune read. So, you can ask about if you'll be successful in life or if you are facing any immediate health issues. You can also cast a spell. So you can say, I really want to fall in love with this person, or I think I have a curse on me. Can you remove the curse? So all of these things, it varies widely, but you can see a voodoo practitioner just about anywhere and for almost anything. Now, I think what's interesting in Togo and Benin, you'd never know that there are voodoo practitioners around. There's no church, there's no building
Mm-hmm.
that says voodoo here. There's none of that. You have to know a guy. So you basically have to be very cheeky and very sneaky around town. Be careful who you ask and how you ask for that sort of thing, because it's always suspect. It's not like something that people readily seek out, especially white people running around with a GoPro. They're going to be like, what do you want? And in fact, that's
Mm.
happened. Um, so I hope that answers the question for a bit. That's kind of what it's about.
It,
Now,
it,
I,
it,
I will say this. Uh, um, I'll, I'll, I'll disclose that I am not a believer. None of this really, some of it was quite amusing, but it's like most religions based on a sort of superstitious religious focus that's been normalized throughout the years. So I give it plenty of respect. I, never said anything or pushed back on the truthfulness of it, but I certainly never felt any spiritual movement or impact from any of the ceremonies that I took part in, especially the ones where I asked for, things to happen for myself. But nevertheless,
Mm-hmm.
it's a cultural artifact that exists, whether or not I believe in it, and therefore should be documented.
I know, I agree with you
Yeah.
100%. So, how, if you're saying that it wasn't that easy to, get yourself around to a voodoo ceremony, what was your way of going about it once you've landed in Togo? You had a guy, you walked around and spoke to
Well, the good thing
people.
about Togo is that it's the one country in West Africa that has a very big voodoo festival. It's every January
Mm-hmm.
at the beginning of the year. Unfortunately, I was unable to go. Um, at the time, we arrived in April, but it's a bit easier there because they know that they are really known for that. I mean, um, they have the world's largest voodoo fetish market. Also, these animal artifacts are called fetishes, or sometimes they build these strange mounds out of mud and dirt and palm oil, and they represent different voodoo gods. You can find them on the roadside. We actually went to one. That's going to be a video that I'll be coming out with soon. Um, so it's a bit easier to ask around. It's more difficult, I think, if you're in Nigeria looking for voodoo because fewer people practice it, and they really want to know what the hell you're up to. Like, are you really believing? Do you really believe in this?
Mm,
What are you trying to do here? What's going on? They're very skeptical. But in Togo, we didn't really need anyone. We certainly asked around for specific things, but the answers were very easy to disclose, like where to go and what to do. And usually for a small fee, you can ask a guide or a tourist agency where you can go for specific things you're looking for. I'll look it up here. I can't remember the name. Um, artist.
yeah, sure.
Um, the Sewa, that's what it's called. Ako the Sewa Fetish Market
Mm-hmm.
is just outside
Mm-hmm.
of, it's about like half a mile outside of the Togo International Airport. And it's this large open
Mm-hmm.
air a market enclosed by large clay wall, and on all of the tables are different animal parts, even for by Western standards, exotic animal parts. These are animals that you and I probably grew up seeing in zoos, from cheetah heads to elephant ears, monkey hands.
Whoa.
Yeah. And
No
so,
way.
yeah, I got all of this on footage. This is going to be the first video that I actually put on the YouTube channel from this trip.
Mm-hmm.
I also wrote about this experience for the Daily Beast, and I can provide you that link after if you'd like
Mm,
to put it in the description and stuff.
I would love to.
Um,
Yeah, of
but if you
course.
Google my name and Voodoo, it'll come up because apparently
Okay.
very few Westerners have been there. Very few care to go. It's also it's an ugly place, although look, it's a part of their culture. People go there to buy. It's almost like a giant pharmacy. People go there to buy these animal
Mm-hmm.
parts to take to a voodoo priest or to a practitioner, and
Oh,
then
I see.
they say, "Hey, cure my erectile dysfunction," and he'll say, "Okay, you need
Mm.
you
It's
need a
always
you need a
that.
horse hoof, and
Yeah.
owl eyes," and they have it. They have it. It was huge. It was the
Wow.
size of a normal football stadium, probably, maybe not that large, maybe half the size, but just
Mm-hmm.
every animal that you can think of, all dead and decomposing. So it really smelled the stench of death
No
inside,
way.
but it was certainly weird. It was a very much an Atlas Obscura sort of trip that day.
Yeah.
Um, but there are tour guides inside. There are voodoo practitioners on site, so you can actually buy some of these animal parts right then and there, and then just take it to the back. We actually didn't do any of that. They really tried to push us to buy some of these things, but we were like, I was traveling with a guy from the UK. we were like, look, we're from the States and the UK. They're not going to let us take a monkey paw back. That's gonna be not that we would, but we just didn't want to say no. But we have customs agencies here
Mm-hmm.
that are not going to allow animal parts, decomposing animal parts, to be let into the country. But yeah, I have photos and things on the Daily Beast article. So if anyone is interested to see that, yeah, you can check that article out, and then just subscribe to my YouTube channel, and you'll see that come up. It's very tedious
For sure.
edit these videos, so it's taken me some time, but that'll be the first part of the series.
Yeah, okay. But you've already started posting things from Benin, haven't
I
you?
posted some shorts. Now there are also I wrote a great article about the experience cooking gumbo for the BBC. That's on the BBC's World Table site. I can also provide you that link. But the long form videos from this trip are not up yet. So what
Mm-hmm.
you'll see on the channel
Got it.
now is my previous experience in Ethiopia in 2019. It was my last trip before COVID shut down everything. And it was my first experience with the Mercy tribe of the lower Omo Valley. The Mercy are a pretty ruthless and dangerous tribe that probably people recognize. The women carry very large lip plates in their mouths
Mm-hmm.
and in their lips. Um, and so I spent about 2 weeks living amongst them, living in on their next to their huts on their land, and just kind of documenting the travel in. It was incredibly, it's almost impossible to reach them, just because the roads are so terrible. You have to take at least one domestic flight within Ethiopia. You have to have fixers. Um, you really have to know people to get that kind of access. So that's what you'll see. That's most of the videos that you'll see on the YouTube channel right now. But all of that is
Mm-hmm.
about to change probably within the next couple of weeks. So I'm going to start releasing items from Togo and in the order in which I traveled. So you'll see the stuff from Togo first, then Benin, then Ethiopia, Kenya, Madagascar, and then I'm just going to keep going from there.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So, as much as you obviously want to talk about it before releasing the
I
materials,
don't mind.
as
It's
much as you're
completely
comfortable.
fine. It's my fault that it's taken
Okay.
this long. It shouldn't have taken me this long, but yeah, like I said, I do a lot of contract consulting on the side, or as my primary job, and then um, reporting and writing all these stories. Life in general just gets in the way, so it's my fault that it's taken so long to get out. But they're coming, I promise.
No, no, of course, that's
Sure.
totally fine. But in terms of just didn't want to essentially be asking you about things that you
Yeah,
prefer to
I'm
basically
an open
share.
book. It's all good.
All right, all right. Um, so you land in Togo first. Is that did I
No, that's
mix it
correct.
up, or was it
We
the
flew
Benin?
from London to Lomé. Lomé is the capital. It sits on the border. Excuse me, on the coast. We got through COVID screening, got through immigration relatively okay. Um, but you certainly notice um, the sort of authoritarian presence there. I mean, it's not an open
Mm-hmm.
democracy by any means. In fact, it's the oldest single family autocracy in Africa. It's where the first coup by assassination happened after European independence occurred. So
Mm,
it's been ruled by a single family since 1967. The first thing you notice are just armed guards everywhere. Um,
mm-hmm.
Security police everywhere. These guys
Mm-hmm.
that mean business in black shades and huge AR-15s, and not even just in the airport. This is in regular society as well. Government SUVs regularly run down the road, but the police clear the streets before these SUVs. They just make their way down main streets. I'm writing an article on the authoritarianism of Togo as we speak, so I'll release that to you as soon as it's published. That's for Palladium magazine, but that's certainly
Fantastic.
that was certainly something that you definitely felt while there. In contrast to Benin, where it's much more open democracy. There was no heavy paranoid government presence there, and they're neighboring countries, they're brother sister countries, so it was quite a contrast.
Okay. So what's the where did you just stay when you were in Togo? Like, do you need to stay in like some places kind of assigned by the government, or you can kind of like go wherever you
It's not that
want
bad,
and
but
just roam the
they do
streets?
have Airbnb there. They do have regular hotels. They have hotels that are geared more for a Western palate. Um, I think the vast majority of its tourism is made up by French. It was a French colony. So we did see a lot of young French people there. I mean, not many. Um, Not like in like the coastline of Kenya, for example. You see, English and
Mm-hmm.
Germans everywhere, but
Mm-hmm.
not so much in Togo. And also, I think one of the reasons is right off the coast, the land and the ocean drops significantly, and it's not safe to swim. So
Oh.
you never really saw anybody on the beach because nobody was getting in the water. You only saw Togolese fishermen going out. So that also added to the eeriness of it because you saw this vast, beautiful beach, beautiful ocean, and nobody is on it. And so
Do people
it was like
serve
the
there?
deserted feeling you get when you see those like North Korean buildings or those buildings in Iran that are completely vacant. It had that same
Yeah.
feeling like people should be out doing something. They had a few little beach bars, but everyone really kept to themselves. People were pretty quiet. There was a police presence everywhere. I was actually detained. Um, with my friend just for having the camera. I was filming some B-reel on the wall, like cracks in the wall,
Mm-hmm.
literally nothing of importance, and immediately got called in by police officer, security personnel to interrogate me and review the footage. Thankfully, I
Mm-hmm.
was quick to have pretty much everything backed up, so I was able to delete a few things on the GoPro, and they were satisfied. And they eventually let me go after about an hour. But um, of the travel logs that I've seen on YouTube, and just some of the other stories that I've heard, Togo does not mess around. They do not like film photography. They do not like photography, just in general at all, which is also a deterrent for tourism. So you can't swim
Mm-hmm.
in the ocean, you can't take pictures, and all that's left is going to see dead animal heads. It's not an attractive place for tourists. So it was a great place for exit strategy
Wow.
because I want to go to places that people don't normally really want to go, or try to uncover some of those weird aspects of some of this culture. So it made for a great subject area for me.
Intriguing. So you're saying that there's a big difference in general vibe between
Benin's
Togo
much
and
more open.
Benin.
Yeah, I mean, functioning democracy. I mean,
Uh-huh.
sure, they both suffer from, like many countries in the region, suffer from rampant government corruption and stuff. But it was a stark contrast. I mean, I had to bribe my way out of Togo, and then
Mm-hmm.
when we paid, I think it was about $30 to get out of Togo. Once we got to the Beninese side, we told them the story, and they rolled their eyes like these idiots over here or something. Like like when will they get it? They can't. You don't treat people this way. More people will come to your country. You don't have to rely on bribes. um,
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, it was a stark contrast. In Benin, people were generally friendlier, happier, more welcoming. I mean, at one point, people were drinking in the streets, and we joined them in dance. You won't get that in Togo. I mean, maybe
Mm-hmm.
a little bit sometime, but not that I saw. I mean, I certainly felt the difference in the attitudes of the people, and of course, not their fault. It's the political system under which they exist, and the regime in which they are, in which they live every day. It's a much more poorer country than Benin, and a smaller
Mm-hmm.
country than Benin, and um, yeah, it's the police presence are ubiquitous. They're everywhere, and Benin just didn't have that. It had a much happier, open vibe. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. So Togo, the market with various animal pieces, that was the highlight. Anything else that you like really blew your mind? Because that anecdote to me was
Yeah, I mean,
incredible.
there was a lot. There are UNESCO World Heritage sites there. When we went up, we traveled from south to north. So I drove a car for the whole length of the country. Um,
How long did it
I
take
think
you?
that it was about, if I remember correctly, it was about 5 6 hours, something like that. Um, and
Oh,
it's
that's
very
tiny.
small. It's very small.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Because Benin is not that small, right? It's kind of like
it's
this,
about
kind of
what
like a
they're both
cylindrical
very slender
country,
countries.
right?
Benin is, I think, one and a half
Mm-hmm.
times larger. I think Benin has got the
Oh,
same
okay.
slender, and then right at the top, it like expands into I guess what is
Mm-hmm.
that, Burkina Faso. So it
Yep.
has a little bit more land mass and more green area too. So it simply just has a higher uh, GDP just from the agricultural sector alone. But in the north, interesting enough, um, those two countries have been on and off for the last 5 years experiencing a spillover effect from a terrorist group called the Islamic
Mm-hmm.
State in the West African provinces. The
Mm-hmm.
Islamic State is, as we speak, being fought by the Nigerian special forces in Nigeria's northeastern provinces. So as they are
Mm-hmm.
being pushed back out of Nigeria, they retreat into some of the northern territory, some of the northern parts of both Togo and Benin. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
it's quite interesting because those are two countries that have never experienced any kind of terrorism before, and now it's now being
Mm-hmm.
pushed over into their borders to some
Yeah.
degree. So I think we were in a place called Cairo, and that's the northernmost main city. And we were forbidden to go out at night. Um, they were just like the hotel simply stated for your safety. The police that were there at the hotel, we were forbade to leave the premises at night because you're just asking for trouble. You're white European and a or white British guy and a white American guy. Our race aside, just our nationalities alone put targets on our back for a group like ISWAP. Now, are they really looking
Mm-hmm.
for? Are they really looking to kidnap in those areas? I don't think it's happened, but you certainly don't want to risk it, and it's certainly a
Mm-hmm.
place that you don't want to be caught at the wrong place at the wrong time with a GoPro camera and stuff. Um, but yeah, that certainly was an interesting feature of the trip because
Wow.
you're not expecting to experience the same sort of security risks that you would should you be going to the Borno state of Nigeria or to Mali or to Niger
Mm-hmm.
um, or Burkina
Yeah.
Faso. Interestingly
Yeah.
enough, too, like right after we left, Burkina Faso experienced a coup and its leader was ousted. And where did his leader decide to go?
Mm-hmm.
Togo, because Togo is this like
Mm-hmm.
authoritarian regime that kind of welcomes these ousted despotic guys,
Mm-hmm.
and as far as I know, I think he might still be there, but yeah. Nevertheless, anyway, I feel like I'm rambling now.
No, I don't think you are. I find it incredibly interesting.